votre excellence, votre éminence, pères, mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue. Quiconque vénère une icône, vénère en elle une réalité qu'elle représente. Ainsi s'exprimaient les pères conciliaires. L'icône est une nécessité essentielle pour le culte. Sergueï Boulgakov écrira: c'est en effet un lieu de présence de la grâce, comme une apparition du Christ. On prie devant l'icône du Christ comme devant le Christ lui-même. L'icône du Christ nous permet de contempler, à travers le visage du Verbe de Dieu incarné, le mystère de l'incarnation, c'est lui qui est le chemin, la vérité et la vie. Dans notre monde post-méta-moderne, où l'image a pris une place prépondérante et où le numérique a bouleversé le fondement même de la notion de communication, il serait opportun de marquer un temps d'arrêt et de réfléchir à l'impact que cela présuppose sur notre relation à l'autre, frères et sœurs, par l'image à notre Créateur. Son Excellence, l'évêque Maxime, évêque du patriarcat du diocèse occidental des États-Unis d'Amérique et professeur à la faculté de théologie de l'Université de Belgrade. L'évêque Maxime est porteur d'une licence en théologie de l'Église serbe orthodoxe en 1993. En 1996, il complète son master de théologie à l'Université d'Athènes et 3 ans plus tard, en 1999, à la même université, il défend son doctorat dans le domaine de la dogmatique et de la patristique. Il travaille sur son postdoctorat pendant 1 an à Paris et à Sorbonne, en 2003 et 2004, en histoire byzantine et en théologie. Peu dans ce temps, il s'attelle à la théorie et à la pratique de la peinture sous la guidance de M. Pinkas à l'Académie française des beaux-arts de Paris. Il parle le grec, le français, le russe et l'anglais. Nous sommes heureux de pouvoir l'inviter dans le cycle de conférence Paroles orthodoxes, où il interviendra sur le sujet Icône et images numériques, la vérité dans l'art. Bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup pour ces mots d'introduction, votre Excellence et Éminence, pères, frères, sœurs, mesdames, messieurs. C'est une joie pour moi d'être avec vous ce soir pour parler sur un topic, thème très important. La langue française que je parle, ce n'est pas très élevé, donc je vais faire une combinaison anglais, français, aussi grec, si c'est possible. Aujourd'hui, on a parlé beaucoup de grec, en grec et aussi en serbe. Donc, cette transmission sur une langue à l'autre est difficile pour moi. Donc, chacun a la présentation dans votre main, et ce sont des pages, je pense. Il y a quelques. Pouvez-vous partager, s'il vous plaît. Donc, j'ai déjà dit que ce sujet est très important. Et il y a beaucoup de choses que vous connaissez déjà. Ah. Félicitations, monsieur. Mais quelqu'un, si vous voulez, c'est possible? Magnifique. D'accord. Donc, thank you very much for your presence. Le phénomène de l'image d'icône est très populaire récemment, spécialement, et c'est inévitable parce que toutes les choses sont iconiques. essentiellement. In a society which is obsessed with multimedia illusions and images, where a visual pollution of every kind has obscured our capacity to see, it is truly difficult to witness to an icon. And this same pollution hinders liberation of our daily lives from captivity to the natural world by means of an iconic ethos, which is very characteristic of both Roman Catholic and Orthodox tradition. This ethos leads us to respect and affirm the other, to humiliate ourselves before the other, whom we are invited to honor even above ourselves, as St. Paul says. So how do we escape the main trap of the third millennium, which is nothing less than a total submission to the novel demand of technology? We just witnessed the difficulties. When I was asked to come and say something, and when I announced the theme, I was asked, are you going to present images? You see how this idea of image is connected to any kind of presentation, especially today. So the increasing attempt to facilitate our everyday life with technological means in a digital culture, which allows technology to enter in our life with all its positive aspects and contribution, to enter into our life, but to control it as well. This could lead to eventually lose or to a loss of both iconicity and uniqueness of human person. So the risk is a serious one in an era of transhuman technology. Each one of us is on a path to becoming a tribe with one member. We see it in our children, the so-called glamorization of our daily life via modern social media is just one of the symptoms of self-idolatry. We know that the first iconoclastic controversy began within the church. But today, social media may be thrusting upon us a new or resurgent iconoclasm that is overwhelming our experience with images through meaningless self-idolatry rather than viewing ourselves as icons of God. And remember that the controversy with images in the 8th century was also about rejection of the image or icon. So technology is omnipresent in our contemporary life, so that we must ask ourselves whether it has become the very reality of life itself. Okay. So it is difficult to discover the manner in which to consider it both authentically and critically. But the question that arises from all these attempts and concerns is a crucial theological or anthropological problem. Can humanity change the way it communicates without altering its own nature at some level? If we started using technology, is it going to impact our own human nature? Thanks to God-given freedom, man faces possibilities too difficult to handle, which are paradoxical and multiple, because they combine the prospect of good and evil. Yet until recently, there was no discussion of the danger of modifying nature and altering the human being. I would say that keeping theology and communication in a synchronous dialogue is something that is very welcome in our opinion. There are many positive aspects and many things could be achieved. But what is necessary is a theological awareness, criteria, and sensitivity. So we do not adopt things or phenomena without questioning them, which is in the heart of church inculturation. Okay? Je ne sais pas le mot pour inculturation, inculturation. So the inculturation could be a very hazardous endeavor without applying some criteria for that. And I don't think that, well, the ancient Christian principle is that everything is good, it depends only on how it is used. So if you use it in a bad way, it could become a bad thing. So we have to see what is the, how could this principle be applied to the internet technology? Can internet be good, not only useful, if we use it in a good way? It appears that few, if any, pose such questions, as it is fashionable to adopt new patterns without any deep questioning or critical examination. Among ancient authors, the term technology referred to oral or written communication. But such kinds of communication after Gutenberg still did not lead to man's alienation. The medium remained constant, but the proliferation increased dramatically. Alienation emerged with a dramatic change in the use of technology by modern man. So maybe we can say something about this, how this new fact that man enters into a system of communication and cannot self-act as before. He must follow a newly established communications protocol by submitting to digitalization. Okay. Furthermore, when everything is inscribed online, what will happen to man's privacy, the protection of personal life? So when it comes to technology, it seems that both individual and personal rights are threatened. Here, by emphasizing the importance of human image or human persons as images of God, the Church provides our culture with a prerequisite for its very survival. Some people have suggested that this alienation is demonic, that each one of us, by taking part in the global system of the internet, willingly becomes a slave of certain superpowers that might be able to form a world government, new world order, or other nefarious societal upheaval. Sounds apocalyptic, doesn't it? And our evolution is really strange. We are led in our days, with the help of digital memory, to the extension of the mechanism of panoptic control into the past. Since the internet remembers even the things that we prefer to forget, okay? And worse, the internet can also maybe selective in its memory. So, as with any other revolution, this one too, informatics, devours its children. The freedom enjoyed by man until recently begins to be lost by subordinating the person to the demands of technology, which, having caught us in its nets, reduces us to mere numbers on the omnipresent displays. Some believe that the blame is to be placed on Facebook or network or any other Twitter or social media platforms. But a defeatist's placing of blame on technology as an undefined, impersonal spirit of history that imposes upon us certain behaviors is not a clever justification. What is needed is a willing effort, because in the end, we decide how to use our machines and not vice versa. I will say something about this willing effort later. Our culture is a culture of short or distracted attention and of simulated virtual relations, in which even the time, which by definition should be free, okay, is filled with our obligations to our connectedness, okay, and thus it ceases to be free. So in the world of instant communication, or absolute communication, as some call it, unbound from time and space, we suffer not only from alienation, unprecedented alienation, but also from the desecration of time. What has happened with the sacredness of the now? We have expelled it too in various ways. Let us look ourselves. When people obsessively photograph what happens to them now, aren't they postponing their encounter with the reality for later consumption? We can argue about this, but it is worth asking if the storing of digital material, photographs, music, movies, and TV series envisions mere possession, which in some cases will become surrogate for a real experience. As we can agree that every given technological novelty brings both a promise and a risk. So many benefits or possibilities from a universal trend enabling the happiness of the individual can explain the ease by which people totally surrender themselves to the power of media ecosystems. Is there anybody to sober or encourage us to re-examine our newly obtained habits so that we become conscious of the seriousness of the problem, of cosmogenic changes in our cultural universe? Will anybody show us, even discreetly, how to avoid becoming mere numbers in this technological advancement and losing our uniqueness and unrepeatability? So, in the ongoing debate about the online euphoria on the American scene, one of the heroes warns, while our cyber profiles become more and more detailed, we even less see each other as persons. This debate sometimes leads to Hamlet's dilemma, to be for virtual reality, supported by cyber worshippers, or to be against, not to be for them, proposed by cyber skeptics. And of course, it's easy to lean towards those who zealously underestimate technology, but also to those who, with the same devotion, defend technology or even celebrate it. There is a sacredness of the text, of cell phone, or email, even religiosity. However, instead of escaping from the digital culture faced with Hamlet's dilemma, one might consider a counter-proposal when, or better, before we notice that despite the convenience it offers, technology begins to deprive us of personal uniqueness by reducing us to numbers, then is moment to resist. So now I come to the point to say something about the icon. Because one approach to facing these challenges is the icon. If the icons of the church confirm or comfort us with divine tranquility, it is because the icons reveal a deeper truth. Thanking iconography, reality becomes true to the extent that it reflects reflects the future or the eschatological state. But what place has the Christian icon or the Orthodox icon in the 21st century? We see them in the large world's museums, offering their space for icon exhibitions and displaying them to a wide non-religious audience. Icons are not any longer exclusive to Orthodox believers in their places of worship. Since they gained celebrity in Catholics, brothers and sisters in Catholic Church, or even Protestants. By cultivating icons, Christians celebrate the scene and vision of life that is transformed and transfigured or changed in the person of Jesus Christ. We know that every genuine art, and an icon is an obvious example, begins from nothingness, from 0 point, and from mass of reality, and reaches to being or person. And now when I mentioned the word person, apart from the extensive theological use of this term, this notion is very significant in dialogue with contemporary art and science. So only with the help of the term person, can we demonstrate the dignity, uniqueness of man. With its eschatological criterion, the icon corresponds with the genuine request of art. In art, the reality of things is represented visually, not as they have been or as they are now, but as they might be. The Byzantine iconography conveys exactly this vision of life to the society and culture in which we live. It expresses the spirit of Christianized Hellenism, which depicts a person as it will be, overcoming thus the protological ontology, which is an ontology of death. Everything that is behind us is behind us. It doesn't exist anymore, while the icon points to the future state. So there's a great challenge that an icon, or this iconic ontology, conveys to our photographic logic. Okay? Because an icon requires a presence without death. Something entirely unthinkable in our collective experience. So the icon does not postpone, rather it anticipates the future by relating it personally and ontologically. We know how the icons are precious treasures in the tradition. They testify to our personal relationship with God, and the viewpoint that Christian does not belong solely to himself or herself, to his or her job, or the ambitions of his or her world, but to God. And icons reveal that we are not alone or isolated, but that we belong to the communion of the saints. Okay. But you might ask, what of it? The identification of Christ with his image leads to the assertion that the church is not an ideology. It is the church, the communion. It is the gathering of the people, and particularly a Eucharistic gathering of living icons. This must be emphasized today, not internet, online, virtual, and ephemeral illusion of communication, but the icon is the visible and true communication of the kingdom. Such must be the future of the church, because as the future Christ promises his church. In the Eucharist, we are taught to venerate not only the icons as objects, and greet them, but also other members of the community of synaxis, not passing the living icons or people by, but greeting and embracing them. So the icon is indeed a proper method of viewing the world. And we believe that only this iconic approach will save the church from becoming a secular organization, conforming to the image of the world and the docetism of virtual communication. Now, what is the relation between an icon and digital art, image numérique? Okay. Orthodox iconography does not deny the digital image. On the contrary, it will affirm whatever is ontologically significant in digital communications by opening the digital image to its eternal significance, by injecting in it the future state. You remember the future state related to the icon now? We have an attempt to combine the digital image with the future state. How? Well, in this perspective, the digital image can play an important role in announcing the arrival of eternal ever-being. Consequently, the image can become an icon without ceasing to be an image. Only if we who view the image look past the superficial graphic and read the written icon, it is sufficient for it to be redeemed from its association with the past. I remember the word protology of death, or ontology of death. Whatever is associated with the past cannot retain its iconicity because the icon refers to the future. But now we must ask, how may the image be liberated from death and become iconic? Well, first, the paradox of the incarnation was addressed and resolved only in visual iconic terms. When the church explained the fact that Christ became man, the church used the visual iconic terms. We know that the culture in which we live is subjugated to the representation of reality, either as an evidence-based representation of how things were or are, that's naturalism, or as a representation with a freedom that distorts the identity of being, of the beings that are represented. That's what happens in modern and postmodern art. Now, the imminent future will force us to view the world through representations of reality which will become so convincing that our minds could become utterly deceived. It will be so virtual that we will be deceived in realizing whether it's real or not. Look at me. The claim of the digital image is a rejection of the iconic ontology, which automatically results in a different understanding of human existence. So without its referring to the future state, every image is forgotten, becomes the past, and it expires. We've seen that, and it's forgotten. Second, an icon bridges the chasm between the three extremes, natural, modern, digital, through the intervention of the person of Christ. But this radical revision of the virtual aesthetic can take place in a more comprehensive ecclesial context. Through a bidirectional relation established by the icon, the object of what I see suddenly becomes a subject, since it approaches me from outside myself. That's how the icon influences us. It's not, at some point it is an object, we look at it, but the next moment it establishes a communication, it becomes a subject, approaches me from outside myself, and influences me. So the iconic approach presupposes that one accepts a presence to which one can relate. Through the end, you heard the term of Uspensky, the inverse perspective. I think that's a word he used. while I propose the increasing perspective outwards, the solution of the increasing perspective so dominant in Orthodox iconography does not suffer from the fragmentation of information given by the optical lens, which at each moment know only certain sides of an object. For iconic knowledge, there is no front or sides and back. Everything is seen as an integral reality. Now let's say something about the Divine Liturgy, which is an event of real communion with God, but it has also an element of iconic ontology. If the liturgy is a foretaste of the age to come, then its entire symbolism should point to a transition from a quotidienne to an eschatological vision of the world. Now, if at the liturgy we do not extricate ourselves from that which we wear from without the liturgy, then we do not point to this freedom. If we go to the liturgy with the same clothes we use every day, we do not point to the reality that overcomes us. The Church, most thanking to its liturgy, has a certainty that we enter the light of and glory of the resurrection. Nin peplirote photos, kapanda. Now everything is filled with light. So if we don't have this entrance of the kingdom or into the kingdom during the liturgy, then we have not adopted this logic, new logic, an eschatological one. And just for the sake of some curious about the church or ecclesial symbolism, let me say something that today's discussions about church or ecclesial symbolism betray the dimness of criteria. Some would like to simplify church symbols, for example, vestments, out of ethical. They want simplicity of the gospel. The world wants simply to see people very simple. Or economic reasons. The money can be given to the poor. So these arguments would have weight if the symbolism did not have a deeper meaning. Maybe we should abolish them if this argument is valid. Yet the crucial moment lies in the question whether adapting to history can occur without adapting to the eschaton whatsoever. And by the eschatological criterion, I mean a vision of the world after the resurrection of Christ's second coming. So now to conclude, in a few words, the Orthodox iconography emerged as an attempt to recover the true iconicity of creation and to heal our damaged sensitivity by referring to everything the ultimate, the last, eschatos, act of God's will. The death shall be destroyed. And St. Paul in the 1 Corinthians said. So when the storm of iconoclasm broke upon the church, it denied the premises for salvation. The whole of the divine human life and the liturgical reality, the honor paid to the saints, the matter which has become filled with the divine grace, etc. Therefore, because its truth, its raison d'être, was denied, the entire body of the church reacted, not just intellectuals or learned persons. Truth in genuine art does not simply correspond to the mind, adequatio rei et intellectus, doesn't refer solely to the mind or reality. An ecclesial definition of truth points to relationality, I don't know the French word, and of common ground of existence that we share. This encounter with the divine in paradox and ambiguity we see in the icon is a matter of relation, rather than logical argumentation. Consequently, an iconographer depicts or interprets the event of the resurrected life not in an individualistic way. Rather, he or she paints icons with a brush tuned to the vibration of the earthquake that raises the dead and does away with hell. Our hope is that digital images may one day reflect this method and ethos. Our culture so badly needs an informational asceticism or digital apophaticism, the terms by which we indicate the abstinence from giving the ultimate priority to virtual reality. So highly conscious of this rich treasure of faith in the holy icons, Christians suitably honor the commemoration of those who bequeathed us this precious heritage. And in so doing, they rediscover this vision while expecting the ultimate transfiguration of the world, which has begun in the church. So regardless of the cost or effort required, the awareness that man is an icon of God must be preserved in our culture. This is the meaning of the celebration of the Sunday Orthodoxy, as it is concisely expressed in the historic Synodicon. So, in advance, I congratulate you and wish you a blessed celebration of Sunday Orthodoxy very soon all together. And thank you for your attention. Merci pour votre attention.
C'est nous qui vous remercions, Monseigneur. C'est un honneur de vous avoir parmi nous, aujourd'hui, ici, au cœur de l'Europe unie, à Bruxelles. Et vous avez parlé justement sur ce qui est au cœur de notre vie. La Sainte Eucharistie, la vénération des icônes, et cela, oui, contradictoirement vis-à-vis de tout art et de communication numérique. Nous savons aussi, Monseigneur, que vous avez participé au grand synode pan-orthodoxe en Crète en 2016. Et peut-être dans l'audience, il y a des gens qui veulent vous poser des questions, ou bien par rapport au sujet que Monseigneur nous a présenté, ou bien sur le concile. Et peut-être moi je commencerai avec une première question, parce que peut-être pas tous sont familiers avec ce style d'iconographie que vous avez présenté. Et peut-être vous pouvez quand même nous expliquer pourquoi vous avez justement choisi ces icônes. J'ai un peu entendu derrière moi, oh, ce n'est pas très beau, ces icônes. Alors peut-être vous pouvez l'expliquer.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question. On parle de la nécessité des le pont, le bridge, entre l'image comme icône et l'image numérique. Et it is easy to realize the difference, okay? The huge difference between the image and an icon. And I try to point to those elements in the icon that makes it different, and there are theological reasons. So when I studied the arts and art in Paris, there was a professor who admired Orthodox icon from the 13th or 14th century. But his question was, what are you doing today? Because we appreciate the achievement of the 14th century. or 6th, or any icon from the previous ages. Are you able to make an icon to be the icon, but to be more contemporary or closer to us? So there are attempts today in the Orthodox iconography, and they are mostly done in Greece. The representatives of that movement are Yorgos Kordis, Stamatis Klidis, Kardamakis Spiros, and a few others. And I know that this is also taking place in the United States. I think that this is a very important attempt to create icons with the means of modern assumptions of art, not copy Picasso or Cézanne, but there are so many valuable things that the modern, especially the art of the 19th century, has brought to us. But their appreciation in the icon is not only theologically justified, because the criteria for making an icon are purely theological, and there are also aesthetic criteria, which are subject to change. But what is crucial in the icon is its theological truth. So I guess this is a fresh look on the icon, and probably very necessary today, just to prove that the Church creates panda kena. At the same time, it's the old. So I have realized that this approach to iconography speaks to modern people, especially children. When they see these expressions and colors, they say, "Oh, this is very close to us." So if it also provokes veneration and respect, then I think we're on a good path to establish this necessary bridge between icon and modern art. Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu, mais merci pour cette importante question.
Donc, il y a la possibilité de poser des questions.
Can I relate and speak English? Can I just take you a bit further on this? If we look at recent saints and their depictions of them, particularly those who've been canonized in the last 20, 30, 40 years, the depictions which seem to speak to people most are photographs, very often black and white photographs. And indeed, some of them, it's an awful problem in putting them into traditional iconographic form. Is this telling us something? Is this telling us that perhaps we need to move on somehow? Or to put the question extremely simply, if Christ had been in the time when they had good photography, would we be having icons in a sort of 14th century Macedonian style on our church walls? Or would we simply be having good photographs?
Thank you. I think that here's a question of the aesthetic evaluation of photograph and painting. We know that any great painting will always have more value than any photographs, because of the freedom that invested in the process of painting. Okay, so the photographic logic is creative, it is an art, but the question is how much the freedom of introducing something of the future age or something that overcomes the corruptibility of a given reality depicted or a person on the icon is there. So I still believe that answering to your question about Christ in our time and the possibility of depicting him, that, or a saint, contemporary saint, we have to find at least some characteristics or means of to express that this person will not die. When you look at a photograph, you will always notice the elements of corruption, of corruptibility, somebody's age, and we see it looking at that person that one day this person will die. But when you look at an icon, there is not this impression. We can agree or disagree on this, but I believe that by putting the halo and the way how the light is applied to the person, to the face of the saints and their vestments and nature, this increasing perspective I mentioned, all these elements point to a truth that will not die, that will give the stability and eternal ever being to this person. I believe that photograph could be used, but if we use just the photograph, I don't know how much this redemptive aspect of our existence will be shown in it. So yes, we can use photos, but
no, but precisely, isn't it precisely, if you take an example, Ainsi of Mount Athos, we've all seen this photograph. There this person has already, in a sense, moved on as a saint into the other life. And we sense it. And I must admit, so far what I have seen of images of Ainsi as icons have not convinced me.
I appreciate that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I still believe that every depiction of a saint or any other reality should appreciate this transcendental element present in the icon, be it a light or halo or perspective. Otherwise, we will have a historic figure without the eschatological input. So for me, the main principal question is, where is this eschatological aspect present?
Good evening, Peter Wiskowski. Thank you very much for a very interesting lecture. I like the modern aspect and the contemporary aspect of the theology of the icons. But my question is a different one, if I may. Can I ask a question about the pan-Orthodox council? There is a one. I was looking at it very closely and I was very happy that it took place, and I appreciated the achievements. But my question to you is, what would you say this brings to the ecumenism?
Okay. First of all, it's not a pan-Orthodox council, but it is a holy and great council. What brings it to the modern ecumenism and ecumenical attempts and expectations? I think it's the message that it conveys, which is that the Church is able to continue its synodality in a way that is manifested as a gathering of the hierarchs. We know that history was not favorable to us in this regards, hindering us from conveying of such magnitude participation of the churches, but anyway, this council took place, and the message of the church is always, how to say, an opening. First of all, the church did not speak about some esoteric issues. There are some themes that are related solely to the Orthodox, but document the mission of the Church in the contemporary world and the relation of the Church to the contemporary, that is the title of the document, speaking about the relations to other Christian confessions. I think that this expression of the Church recognizes the historical existence of other churches is so important. It is not breaking with the tradition, because we know that throughout the second millennium, the councils, the fathers, the documents would speak about the other churches, especially Roman Catholics, as a church. Even Saint Mark of Ephesus, who is well known as the one who criticized our Western brothers, he didn't stop calling them church even after the Union of Florence, the Council of Florence, which means that there is no problem with this name. I think that that's an opening that also, I mean, even before the Council, the context and communication and relations and everything existing and continues. The Council, I think, furthermore emphasizes that and allows us to strengthen the relation. Was there a question?
Θεοφιλέστε, ήθελα να ρωτήσω, εσείς που συμμετείχατε ως μέλος της Αγίας και Μεγάλης Συνόδου, πώς βοήθησε αυτή η σύνοδος να μας αναλύσετε στην εικόνα του σημερινού ανθρώπου? Είναι πολύ σημαντικό, διότι εκτός από την εικόνα που βλέπουμε, η Αγία και Μεγάλη Σύνοδος οπωσδήποτε συνέδραμε στην ανάλυση, στην προβολή της εικόνας του σύγχρονου ανθρώπου. Πώς βοήθησε σε αυτή την κατεύθυνση?
Traduction.
Yes, how this Holy Synod actually helps the Orthodoxy to expose and to present the image of the icon.
Okay, so not every council and not every oros or document or council in the past would address all the issues. Some of them were very limited, with limited theological context. For instance, the oros of the Seventh Ecumenical Council did not address the world or the social issues. It was so instead of speaking about dogma of icon, the fathers of the council pointed to an icon and said, "This is the faith that established the universe. This is the faith of the fathers." But they didn't explain that faith because the icon spoke for itself. And I think that the icon of the council speaks of itself, and it depends on us how we look at it. If there is a goodwill and attentioned approach, we will see in the council or synod some real aspects and images of the council or synod. If we are under the influence of other groups or expectations, then the synod or council will be weak in our eyes. But there are so many references in the documents to the problems that people are facing today: poverty, the social issues related to the human rights, justice in the world, wars, etc., etc. So I think that everybody could see that. But the council in itself is something that is not, that doesn't have the word by the conclusion, at the conclusion of the council. It's something that is lived by the church. That's why today our generation confirms the First Ecumenical Council, or Second It is something that is constantly reaffirmed and re-received through the process of the reception. So maybe one day we will refer to this council as something very important. Maybe it will be just one of many councils in the history of the church, but we will leave the future to decide about that, not just my subjective opinion. One more.
Merci pour votre présentation. Si j'ai bien compris, votre présentation il avait deux parties. La mauvaise utilisation des nouvelles technologies et un essai de projection d'un nouveau mode d'expression des icônes dans le monde contemporain qui est aussi, ça va avec l'évolution de l'Église. Et je pense que la mission de l'Église, c'est l'adaptation de la modernité dans la mise à jour de le message évangélique dans la modernité et la réponse aux besoins de la modernité. Peut-être que ces icônes sont étranges que vous avez, pour nous, ce que vous avez montré, mais c'est un essai au moins. Et vous avez fait des nuances que l'homme contemporain il utilise les nouvelles technologies comme des substituts, des surrogats. Et il n'a pas cette connexion avec l'expérience eucharistique qui donne des critères pour exprimer ce qui est divin, ce qui est eschatologique. Alors, comme l'art, c'est l'expression du monde intérieur des artistes, ce qui nous manque aujourd'hui, c'est cette référence avec l'expérience eucharistique, parce que aussi tous les grands artistes byzantins, ils étaient des grands théologiens, n'est-ce pas? Oui. Alors, on a eu assez de faire copier ces grands artistes, et c'est le moment de passer à quelque chose qui est moderne, mais en même temps qui partage la même expérience du passé. Est-ce que vous aurez un problème si l'art post-byzantin serait désigné sur une tablette avec un iPen?
Père Georges Florowski, il a dit que la langue des icônes est la plus parfaite langue de l'Église exprimée en couleur. Okay? So, Father Florowski also said that in the life of the faithful, the dogmas, the teaching of the church are not, due to some causes and influences from the outside, which are not lived properly. So somebody could cultivate his own individual piety by never referring to the Holy Trinity. So that is a problem. And the icon, I think, offers us this perspective, the integral and holistic vision that includes all the aspects of the fact that Christ was incarnated, and he's also the one of the Trinity, and he is always in communion with his saints. We cannot imagine Christ as an individual, neither the Mother of God. She is always pointing to him. Now, the question of representing these truths through the digital images, it's a good question. I know that George Cordis already makes digital icons. They're really beautiful. In my opinion, even better than regarding the colors, from what colors he uses in his icons. It's an opening, and I would encourage that. But again, some of the basic criteria from theology should necessarily be employed. But thanks for the question. I have to think about it, and the one about photograph as well. Okay, so I think that you had a word. You began, and maybe you would like to say something again.
remercie, Monseigneur, pour votre présence, pour votre contribution, pour nous avoir introduits dans ce sujet très intéressant. Je remercie aussi vous tous qui êtes venus, qui avez fait l'effort. Nous essayerons de temps en temps d'organiser des conférences. Je remercie spécialement le Père Philadelphos, qui maintenant a pris la charge d'organiser ces conférences, ce cycle de conférences, et aussi M. Papadopoulos de Diablos, qui n'a pas pu être parmi nous ce soir. En fait, c'était lui qui, un jour, est venu nous visiter pour dire qu'on a besoin d'avoir des moments de se rencontrer autour d'un thème. Et il est un fonctionnaire de l'Union européenne et il a bien compris qu'il y a un besoin. Alors, nous contribuons dans ce domaine-là avec nos frères dominicains qui, ici, au cœur de l'Europe, font beaucoup de choses dans ce domaine-là. Et toujours côte à côte avec nos frères et sœurs catholiques, protestants, anglicans et orthodoxes. Nous allons continuer d'approfondir notre être chrétien et comment nous pouvons manifester la présence de Dieu dans ce monde. Merci beaucoup. Nous vous invitons encore pour un petit verre d'amitié au fond de la salle. Et je donne la parole aussi au Père Ignace Berthen, Père dominicain, qui nous accueille ici ce soir.
Simplement dire que nous sommes très heureux de pouvoir vous accueillir et que vous êtes toujours bienvenus et que j'espère donc qu'il y aura de nouvelles initiatives. Et bonne suite de soirée.